Hello and welcome to this special edition of Eco Africa on green transport. And that means today's show will focus on clean solutions for getting people and things from place to place using both modern high-tech and traditional means. I am Sandra Twinovideo here in Kampala, Uganda. Thank you for joining us.
And a warm welcome from me too. I'm Chris Lems in Lagos, Nigeria. Sustainable transport systems are becoming increasingly important because they play a major role in curbing the speed and severity of climate change. So where do we stand today? And what qualifies as green transport? Here is an overview in our Eco Check.
The transportation of people and goods accounts for almost 1/3 of global CO2 emissions. During the coronavirus crisis, emissions dropped from 8.5 to 7.2 gigatons. That figure has to be reduced to 5.7 gigatons by 2030 to meet the Paris Climate Agreement target of 1.5 degrees. Almost half of the CO2 in the transport sector is emitted by cars and other light vehicles at 3.3 gigatons per year. Eco-friendly technologies and better urban infrastructures could allow us to stay mobile while emitting far less CO2. Look at Oslo. Despite growth, CO2 emissions are dropping in Norway's capital. Over 40 measures like car-free zones have helped emissions fall by 25% since 1990. By 2030, the aim is to achieve a 95% drop. Africa sees public transport systems as one solution. In Tanzania's Dar es Salaam, a rapid bus network operates with greener vehicles to reduce congestion and pollution. Africa produces only 4% of the world's CO2 emissions, but it suffers the most from climate change. Yet alternative means of propulsion, such as electricity or hydrogen, are only found in just under 1% of all vehicles worldwide. Inadequate infrastructure is a factor. Consider the hydrogen-powered Popemobile given to Pope Francis by a Japanese automaker. The range of the vehicle is 550 kilometers, but the nearest charging station is in Milan, 600 kilometers from the Vatican. Electric-powered air cabs and transport drones are also best suited to short distances, but mass production is still a long way off. In the short term, cable cars could also relieve traffic congestion. In Bolivia and in Colombia, they're already integrated into the public transport system. It's an idea that could also work in Berlin or Kampala.
I actually think having a cable car here in Kampala would be pretty great, although it could be a while before that really happens. Some of the cleaner technologies are still in the early stages of development, but there are also ways to reduce emissions by making adjustments to existing machines and engines. Here in Uganda and neighboring Rwanda, many roads are overrun by motorbikes, but in the future, they'll be creating a lot less noise and fumes.
This is a significant moment for Eric Tuyishime. Today, the Kigali motorcycle taxi driver is filling his gas tank for the last time. Soon, he'll swap his combustion engine for an electric one.
Operating a transport business using an old motorcycle like mine is really difficult. It breaks down a lot, so at times I have more expenses than profit. That's why I'm converting it into an electric motorcycle.
But operating costs aren't his only concern. Tuyishime has been driving a motor taxi for 7 years. He's also aware of the pollution revving his engine creates. So he was glad to take the advantage of a project initiated by the Rwandan Environment Management Authority in cooperation with a UN development program. It aims to phase out traditional engines and retrofit them with electric drives. That's done in this workshop in Kigali. Eric Tuyishime received a loan from his taxi cooperative to cover the cost of around 680 euros. That's 3 months' salary, a lot of money for a small businessman. But he's been assured it's worth the investment.
You don't need oil. Our motor are service-free, and you don't need service a chain. We don't use chains. All those costs, they are kept by the rider. So to them, it's a benefit.
And for the time being, maintenance is free of charge. So far, around 100 motor taxis have been retrofitted, and demand is growing.
I'm receiving big number of orders for not only for new electric bikes, but also the retrofitting of the old bikes. So this is a positive response of the market, on Rwandan market. And even other countries, neighboring countries are calling me, are asking me about the product.
After a few hours, the transformation is complete. Tuyishime's motorcycle now runs on 2 batteries. Each provides power to cover about 60 kilometers. Once they're empty, they can be swapped for charged batteries at a collection point. The empties are picked up by a truck, also e-powered of course, and then charged at a central location. One charge costs about 76 euro cents. After about 30,000 kilometers, the retrofit starts to pay off due to the savings on gasoline. About 50% of licensed motorcycles in Rwanda are motor taxis. By 2026, Rwanda's Environment Authority wants to see at least half converted to electric drive.
All motorbikes were to convert from fossil fuel to electric powered motorbikes, we would be able to save around 9 billion per year. And this is almost 45% of the total amount of fossil fuel that we would be saving as a country.
It's certainly made a difference to drivers like Eric Tuyishime.
In the past, when I rode my gasoline motorcycle, everyone would look at me and shake their heads because of all the smoke pouring out. Some customers would even refuse to let me drive them. That's no longer an issue.
Another retrofitting shop will soon open in Gisenyi. It's hoped that motor taxis in the city of Goma, across the border in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, will also choose this cleaner alternative.
As someone living here in Uganda, I can tell you it is definitely a change for the better. And it is also nice to think that someday in the not so distant future, all of the new motorcycle taxis will be made green from the beginning.
Let's hope so, Sandra. But for now, batteries are still probably the most important component of an electric vehicle. Unfortunately, the process of producing them isn't so environmentally friendly. And that's only part of it. What happens once they're used up? Can they be recycled better? Our next report considers these issues.
The automobile has brought comfort and independence to the lives of billions of people. But guzzling ever-growing amounts of fossil fuels has also taken its toll on the climate.
We have an energy crisis.
Thanks to lithium-ion batteries, we might now be entering a new era of mobility. Because of their high energy density, they are perfect in electric vehicles. For a relatively tiny package, they pack a big punch.
For everything in mobility, lithium-ion batteries, I would say they have been a key technology, really. The potential is so big in that sector. We get such a scale in the production, and that brings the cost down of the batteries.
The global fleet of electric vehicles is predicted to grow immensely over the next decade, from around 8 million to 116 million. This means the demand for lithium-ion batteries will also shoot up, and this is where we might run into some problems.
Of course, it has a cost. We need materials to produce the batteries, and in any extractive industry has an impact on the environment.
Lithium is, as you probably guessed, pretty central to making a lithium-ion battery. About 50% of the world's reserve of this alkali metal can be found here, in the so-called lithium triangle across Argentina, Bolivia and Chile. Mining it involves pumping salt water from underground lakes into pools and letting it evaporate, a process that could harm the surrounding soil, drain water supplies and contaminate the air. Also, lithium is finite. A study found we could run into serious trouble by mid-century if demand keeps growing like this. And then there's cobalt that also goes into lithium-ion batteries. It's a metal mainly found in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Its mining has often been linked to inhumane working conditions and child labor. People exposed to it have suffered from lung disease or heart problems.
Then you have also the energy that is required to make these batteries. And especially production of cells require a lot of energy.
And this means CO2 emissions. How much exactly really depends on the electricity mix of the producing country. But according to recent figures, making just a small battery for a car like this could cause more than 4 tons of CO2. To give you an idea, that's like driving a new diesel car bought in the EU for about 33,000 kilometers. The good news is that emissions are sinking as battery production becomes more efficient and we shift towards cleaner energy sources. The bad news is that the batteries are losing capacity over time, so as there are more and more EVs, there will also be more and more spent batteries. How do we deal with them? For example, they can be turned into energy storage for wind or solar. They could also power your next camping trip, and they still have enough juice left to drive a forklift or a boat. And discarded EV batteries are already used for all these things today.
We should extend the value and lifespan of that materials by reusing. After using up the original function of that product, they could be recycled as raw materials and to produce more products.
Let's get out the Lego to understand how lithium-ion batteries get recycled. It often involves smelting, so essentially heating them until they melt. But this uses lots and lots of energy, creates toxic emissions and loses some of the materials. And that's why companies are coming up with new ways to recycle.
We've basically come up with a process designed specifically for this to have high recovery rates of the material. And the first stage, what we call our spoke, is a mechanical process that breaks down the batteries and separates some of the fundamental materials.
Very, very simply speaking, this is what happens. The batteries are shredded while being submerged in a non-toxic solution. This is important because it prevents them from catching fire and, in the worst case, blowing up. Then materials like plastic, copper and aluminium are separated from what the industry calls the black mass. This contains the valuable materials like cobalt, nickel and lithium.
The second part of the process is the hub, and this is really a bespoke hydrometallurgy or wet chemistry process to process black mass into battery-grade materials.
You end up with the black mass separated into its single components like lithium, cobalt and nickel.
So the end goal is that as we pull them out of the batteries, we're putting them back into new batteries, and that hasn't been achieved yet at a high scale. There's elements of it around the world, but we want to help to continue to drive that forward.
It is hard to keep track exactly how many lithium-ion batteries already get recycled, mainly because they're often exported. But it is already happening more and more, especially in Asia, where most of them are also produced. And as volumes of spent batteries grow, it will make even more financial sense to recycle them.
As science and industry continue to look for ways to optimize battery production, other potential power sources are also being explored, like hydrogen, which could become the energy of the future, especially for industrial production and transport. The gas is particularly environmentally friendly when it is produced with the help of renewable energies. A community in the north of Germany is testing it out on a small scale.
If only our exhaust pipes emitted just water.
As the driver, you know you're the only thing producing CO2.
The whole world can learn something here.
Our hydrogen production facilities in Bosbühl could be a blueprint for the rest of the world.
And they're proud of what they've achieved.
It's fantastic. We can produce it and use it locally.
We're in Germany's far north to see a trailblazing pilot project. This region is endeavouring to switch from fossil fuels to hydrogen. Is it working? And what is it costing locals? For a few weeks now, 2 hydrogen-powered buses have been running on the scheduled routes. Several refuelling stations have had to be built for the project. Here, cars can also fill up with hydrogen. What does the driver think about his new bus?
The great thing is that it's so quiet. You only hear the electric motor and steering gear. Otherwise, it's silent. Of course, with passengers on board, you can hear their talk. Sometimes that's not so nice, but at some point you switch off and focus on other things, like the traffic.
But is the bus really fit for everyday use?
Currently, it's sometimes difficult to refuel. The bus and the refueling facility aren't communicating with one another. It's a software problem, but that can be solved. A few software updates should fix it.
This is the heart of the hydrogen project.
This here is our electrolyzer. I'll open it.
Andrei Steinau got the pilot project off the ground. His company operates the electrolyzer, which cost several million euros. Here, hydrogen is made from water. The process needs a lot of electricity.
We have a grid bottleneck here. Wind turbines are actually forced to shut down. We have periods of excess electricity. We wondered what to do with this electricity. Rather than waste it, we wanted to use this energy, store it, and use it when renewables aren't available. We aren't just feeding it back into the grid, but using it in other sectors, like mobility and heating.
And this is how it's done. With the help of the wind power, purified tap water is split into oxygen and hydrogen. The hydrogen is then transported to the local hydrogen refueling stations. A lot of heat is generated in the process of creating hydrogen. This is fed into the district heating grid, enabling buildings to be heated carbon-free in the nearby village of Bosbühl. Max Böhm is one of the beneficiaries. He says he hasn't had any problems with it so far.
The heating and the buses are just the beginning. Of course, it would be nice if there were also 1 or 2 hydrogen-powered cars parked outside. But at the moment, not everyone could afford it. We also couldn't afford it. But I think the future looks promising, definitely.
A hydrogen-powered car costs approximately twice as much as the equivalent diesel model. There are only 30 on the road in the region up to now. Filling up is also pricey.
We have to get used to the fact that a green economy is more expensive than a fossil fuel-based economy. That's the price we pay for climate protection. But we're all interested in saving our world. This technology has been around for a long time, but it's still in its early stages. It hasn't been put to large-scale use, and that will make it cheaper.
The people here think that in just a few years, this climate-friendly energy will cost the same as conventional energy. The examples show the technology is already fit for everyday use.
Emissions-free buses would certainly be a welcome sight in heavily populated areas. In many large cities in Europe, biking is gaining ground as a cleaner, greener and quicker means of personal transport. Wouldn't that be a good option for megacities in Africa too?
Yes, indeed, Chris. It's not just the time otherwise wasted in traffic. Think of the air pollution. But if you're not in a vehicle moving through city streets, can be dangerous. This is why activists and cyclists in Egypt are fighting to make biking more accessible in Cairo.
It's an ordinary weekday in Cairo. Heba Atia Musa is riding to work on her bicycle. It's rare to find people here in Cairo commuting by bike, and even more rare to see a woman out cycling. But as an urban planner working to turn Cairo into a bike-friendly city, Musa finds it normal to cycle each day, although at times it takes a little courage. She's seeing firsthand what improvements need to be made.
I usually ride on the right-hand side of the street. That's where you get all the dust and garbage in the gutters, and the road is often damaged. People in cars don't expect to see bikers, and when drivers swerve too close to me, it can be dangerous.
The streets are laden with obstacles of all kinds. The Cairo metropolitan area is the largest in Africa, with a population of over 21 million. Vehicles and pedestrians all compete for space. The Egyptian authorities have gone to great effort to build bridges and widen highways. In recent years, they've built a 7,000-kilometer-long road network across the country. Since the start of the pandemic, there's been a slight increase in the number of cyclists in the Egyptian capital. At this bicycle shop in downtown Cairo, Mohammed Yusri has noticed more people are wanting to buy bikes now.
Public transportation is very crowded. And during the pandemic, some people have been afraid that if they take it, they might catch the virus. So they're looking for a bike to ride instead. Also, the volume of traffic and congestion in the city has caused people to realize that bicycles are actually a good way of getting around.
But things will need to change if cycling is to gain wider appeal. Tabdil, where Heba Musa works, is one of several initiatives looking to do that. The startup was created in 2018 by 4 urban planners. Set up with private donations, their work is now funded by the Arab Council for Social Sciences. Tabdil seeks to make cycling more viable. It also gathers data on the existing and projected number of cyclists, their commuting routes, and factors affecting their decision to hop on a bike. At the United Nations Habitat Office in Cairo, research is also being done into ways to improve the city's infrastructure for cyclists and other road users.
We want to have cycle paths in the city centre and also bike sharing. This will require changes in the layout of the streets. If 70% of travel is done either on foot, by bike or by public transport, then 70% of the street needs to be dedicated to those modes of transport.
UN Habitat says public transport is used for 55% of all journeys in Cairo, while cycling and walking account for 13%. Cycling groups are now popping up in different parts of the city. Like Go Bike, created by keen cyclist Mohamed Sami, he got the idea while living in Europe, where he noticed some people using bicycles as their main mode of transport.
We are encouraging people to get cycling because we want to reduce the number of cars, taxis, and buses on the roads. For someone traveling a short distance of 5 to 6 kilometers, let's say to the supermarket, or visiting friends, they could go by bike, which would be a better option. And it would help reduce the congestion that we all dread so much.
The Go Bike group meets every Friday morning in a different part of Cairo. Spare bikes are available for those who haven't got one. Everybody is welcome to join in.
It's a great idea and it's well organized. This is the main reason I decided to join. I tried once before and this is my second time.
On this day, approximately 30 riders are covering a distance of over 12 kilometers on Cairo roads. Most of the riders are women, making it quite an eye-opener for many in the city and highlighting how cycling can be an activity for anyone.
If we had proper infrastructure and a cycle path that kept me away from the cars and all the obstacles, it would be so much better. It would really improve my daily ride to work. And I'd like people to get used to seeing cyclists, and women cyclists too. Bikes are not just for men.
A start has been made, but it's clear there's still a long road ahead.
I imagine we'll be hearing a lot more stories like that in the future. Well, we've come to the end of our special edition on green transport. I hope you enjoyed the program. Thank you for joining us. I am Sandra Twinovidio saying goodbye from Kampala here in Uganda.
Bye for now, Sandra. See you next week. And I hope that's true for all you viewers out there too. In the meantime, visit us on our social media platforms. We're always interested to hear your thoughts and comments on the program. I am Chris Lems, wishing you a very fruitful week ahead. Bye for now.